Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations on Groong. In this episode, we're continuing to discuss the outrageous attacks against the Armenian Apostolic Church by Nikol Pashinyan and his government. For this, we'll soon be joined by Father Serop Azarian, a clergyman and a member of the Armenian Apostolic Church.
Folks, thanks for listening to our shows. We humbly accept them as your vote of confidence, your trust that we bring you truthful reporting of Armenian news. There are no corporate assets here, no government shills, no political associations. It's just Hovig and me, our honest but informed beliefs, and our mics.
And our loud mouths. And of course, the many listeners who have given through our Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee pages. Thank you again for all of your contributions.
Thank you. And in 2026, we want to see you be successful and join our group of listeners who support us. So go to podcasts.groong.org/donate and become a sustaining member, or just give once, twice, 3 times through those pages.
And if financial support is not possible right now, you can still help us tremendously by just commenting, liking, sharing our show with your friends on your timeline. And unlike the Trump route, spreading the word doesn't need anyone's permission.
Thank you for listening. On with the show now. You'll be interested in hearing this show.
Ornazek Hayr, welcome to the Groong podcast.
Asfadzortni, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you, Father Serop.
There's Serop. This is your first time on our show. Hopefully it will be not the last time, and definitely we'll see each other more frequently. But would you tell us about yourself and your involvement in the Armenian Apostolic Church and the Armenian community? Just whatever you would like our viewers and listeners to know about you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Hovik and Aspet. It's a pleasure to be here with you. To go back on my background a little bit, I was born in Kuwait and from Syrian Armenian parents, and came to this country. Of course, I got my education over there in Kuwait in the Armenian local elementary and middle and high school. After graduation, I came to the United States in 1987, whereas I first, of course, before my education, joined the U.S. military and did 8 years of military service in the United States Army. I'm a United States Army vet. And afterwards, I wanted to, at the meantime, I would say, wanted to pursue my clerical education in 3 universities, which are on my page on Facebook. After doing those, I got ordained in 1999. I'm one of those clergy who very unique, probably the only one, if there are any others, who have never been to an Armenian seminary. In other words, to Echmiadzin, to Antelias, or to Jerusalem, or to Constantinople. I've not been to one, so therefore my education is purely religious, scholastic, and totally based on the education that I received, of course, in the local churches here in the United States, but at the same time, it was in the universities here in the United States. After pursuing my education, getting my bachelor's in divinity, I became ordained in 1999, whereas I served first in the East Coast in the prelacy, in the Armenian prelacy. As you know, there are 2 parallel primates or parallel leaders of the church in the United States on either coasts, on the East Coast and the West Coast. One belongs to the Mother Holy See of Holy Echmiadzin, and one belongs to the Great House of Cilicia. Of course, since due to my background, I was in the Great House of Cilicia, whereas I was ordained in Massachusetts. Afterwards, after my transfer to the West Coast, I joined Mother Holy See of Holy Echmiadzin, whereas I've been since 2007. Years have taken me here and there. Years have been probably somewhat sweet and bitter sometimes for me. I've been always a straightforward clergyman in the Armenian Apostolic Church, and I have a good background in my authorship, writing, translations, and I shouldn't say this, probably people have to dig it out, but I'm glad to say that the first time that Armenian Apostolic Orthodox Church's liturgy, the Divine Liturgy, Surpadarak, was translated into Arabic by me. So I did that and gave it to the respective churches which are interested in that. This was in
Wow.
2013.
All these centuries, we haven't had an Arabic liturgy?
We have the liturgy in other churches, but of course in the Armenian Apostolic Church, there was no translation whatsoever.
Okay, I'm
So
amazed.
that was one of them. And of course, since 2014, since my return from Canada, whereas I served between 2011 and 2014, early 2014, I've been working as a court interpreter here in Clark County, and I work for that realm here in Clark County in the Regional Justice Court, in municipal, family, and other courts. And I've interpreted some cases which are remarkable here and there. That's a very brief introduction about it.
There's sort of, I do want to actually to dive a little bit deeper into that. You are currently not serving in a capacity as a priest, as a as a kahana. So can you tell us a little bit more on why? Because I'm sure we'll touch upon this in more detail, but is it your choice? Is it what drove you to I guess not fully devote yourself to the church
Okay.
and become an interpreter?
Thank you. That's a good question, but let me make a correction, please. It's not that
Okay.
I'm not serving as a priest. Yes, I am still a priest, and I'm serving as a priest in the Armenian Apostolic Church, even now. However, I'm not a pastor. There's a difference between being a priest and a pastor. In Armenian, kahana,
My apologies.
because you have to know that any churchman, even in the non-Armenian apostolic realm, even in the Orthodox or Catholic or other churches, even Protestant, let's say, you can be a clergyman, but you can serve in a different capacity, as a doctor, as a lawyer, as a chaplain, as a teacher, as an educator, as many, many other ways, even as a scientist. We have scientist priests who probably are unique, and there are some Catholic priests who serve in those realms too. Not being different than them, of course, the Armenian Apostolic Church has priests who probably are not pastors, spiritual pastors of a given church. I am serving right now as a priest, but not as a pastor. Why? Well, that's a complex and loaded question because it is the unfortunate choice of His Eminence Hovnan Derderian of the Western Diocese, because he has a certain approach to me. He has a certain way of viewing me. Although, even if you look at it from the spiritual realm or from the canonical, view, it is non-valid, because if a priest has not done anything wrong, if he has not done any kind of mistake or any kind of trampling upon a canonical law or anything else like that, he should not be taken out of a thema or a tem or a diocese. If a priest is guilty of a mistake, major sin, let's say, or if he has done something wrong, and not based on a whimsical decision, let's say, by a person, in that case, he shouldn't be taken out of a diocese. However, this is his choice, and of course I have written about it and spoken about it sometimes, and unfortunately for years that wasn't on the radar of Holy Echmiadzin. Now it is, based on the current events that are taking place.
Okay. Serop, our main topic today is about the attack on the Armenian Church in Armenia by the state. So let me give a very brief background about that.
Yes.
The Pashinyan regime has long had a tense relationship with the Armenian Apostolic Church. And after the capitulation in the 44-day war in 2020, the church was one of the institutions, along with many other institutions around the country, the opposition, everybody else, that demanded Pashinyan's resignation. But until recently, it looked manageable. The relationship just chugged along. The church invited Pashinyan as a head of state to religious ceremonies, and Pashinyan attended, and things went on. That changed after May 2025, when the Catholicos spoke at a Swiss Peace Initiative summit in Bern, where he raised the issue of the return of Armenians back to Artsakh and the need to protect the Armenian cultural and religious rights there. Soon after that, we saw a coordinated escalation. Azerbaijani religious figures questioned core Armenian holy sites. Anna Hagopian publicly started smearing the Armenian clergy, and Pashinyan began a sustained campaign of character assassination, insults, and political pressure on Armenian clergy loyal to the Catholicos and the Catholicos himself, as a matter of fact. Since then, the crackdown has hardened. Multiple bishops are jailed on dubious charges, and several churches reportedly seized or placed under control of defrocked clergy backed by the state. And most recently, Pashinyan and a group of 10 renegade bishops issued a reform roadmap that reads a little bit less like a reform and more like a takeover, aiming to sideline the Catholicos, install a loyal interim or acting vicar, whatever that means, really, renaming the church. And we'll talk a little bit about that also, and impose state-controlled rules under the banner of transparency. Tell us, what sort of a stage is Pashinyan setting up for 2026 between him and the church?
I mean, the questions were very, very elaborate, and I appreciate the way that you have, of course, presented it, Aspet. But
that was a very short summary, to be honest.
Of course.
Very short summary.
We have all gone through it, and I'm sure that we are all in the same boat. But the thing is this, that Pashinyan is right now currently fighting for his political life, because for him it's either life or death. It's one or the other. He is basically, he knows very well that after the capitulation of 2020, after the many wars that he had, of course, or the attempts on Armenia's border in 2021, 2022, in October 6th of 2022, when he went to Prague, Czech Republic, he over there officially accepted Artsakh being part of Azerbaijan, on which he had no right whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Not being an elected official of Artsakh, not being a person who probably was going to represent Artsakh. Artsakh had its own government when he probably took over, staged a war, and God knows what he took in return from the Azeri government. And at the end, in 2023, when he finally did everything possible in order to have Artsakh surrounded, 9 months of Artsakh living in a ghetto. This was the same as the Warsaw Ghetto in World War II, when the Polish Jews have underwent the unbearable situation. At the end, they gave up, and most of them were taken to the concentration camps, and they were massacred. Of course, we know that what Azerbaijan was going to do, probably something similar, if they resisted. And of course, lots of people say, why didn't you resist? Why didn't you fight? Why didn't you do this and that? Without forgetting the detail of being first in their shoes, trying to be in their shoes, and trying to be in 9 months without food or water, trying to be, surrounded by enemy, constantly being harassed, and the situation narrowed. And of course, they blame always, another party, in this case, Russia, as to not protecting them. Russia was, of course, preoccupied in Ukraine. At the same time, Russia was saying, if your government is doing this, what is in it for us, basically? But I'm not trying to protect Russia at all. I'm not saying that they are completely, of course, without any blame. Everyone has their blame. But the main blame falls on this regime, that they did everything possible in order to destroy Artsakh. However,
and of course, before... can I just also add that right during the September 19 attack, the attack that put a bookend on the blockade, the Armenian government announced that they would not guarantee the security of Armenians in Artsakh, something that they have always done. So that, I think, needs to be taken into major account as well.
Absolutely. Armenia's government, I have to even go a further step and say they cannot even guarantee the Armenian security today. If there is any kind of an attempt on Armenia's border, especially in the south, after the election, God forbid, then I will be very sure that the government in Armenia will try to come up with any kind of excuse in order to say that we cannot just defend ourselves in this current situation, and Azerbaijan is basically more powerful. What do you want people? Do you want war? So do you want to have another fight? Let's give them something else. Let's appease them. This chamberlainship that's going on all the time, when I mean chamberlainship, I mean, of course, Neville Chamberlain in 1938, when he was basically appeasing Adolf Hitler, and at the same time trying to avoid war by all possibility, not knowing that probably Hitler was going to go more and more and more, get all of Poland, and then probably France, north of France, and not only that, blockade England too. I mean, of course, we know this was an alternative history. Coming back to the question that Aspet posted, the Armenian Church is no exception. What happened at Pashinyan, first of all, of course, I don't want to give his name, I apologize, but for the sake of reference, the so-called Prime Minister of Armenia, who is basically an official today, put in Armenia by the Turkish states. When I say states, by both Azerbaijan and Turkey. I do not consider Pashinyan anymore to be the Prime Minister of Armenia since 2020, because he is doing everything that the Azeri government is dictating to him. What kind of prime minister that is of a country who, of course, having an animosity of 30 years with an enemy country who is bent on destroying us, massacring us, denying us our rights, denying us our existence in Armenia. Many times. How many times do we have to hear Azerbaijani officials who will come on the air and say that country which is called Armenia is Western Azerbaijan? And after destroying our army, devastating it, let's say, after not trying to upbuild it in the full capacity and power that Armenia deserves to be defended by. For example, the same time when he denies us our demands or pursuit of justice, when he denies us our Armenian Church's education inside the Armenian educational system, when he denied Ararat, for example, which is stamped in the heart, and not even stamped, it is basically engraved in the heart of every Armenian since his birth. I mean, you cannot be an Armenian without knowing that you belong to, or Ararat belongs to Armenia, not to any other nation. And of course, I have expressed myself so many times before this time about this. When he denies the Armenian genocide in a certain devious way, when he says that we have to find out what happened.
It's complete Turkish narrative. It's a complete Turkish MO.
This is unbelievable. This is unacceptable. No one in the world deserves to be the prime minister of the Republic of Armenia if he says something like that. No one. Therefore, and of course, you will see a clip on my page that I was expressing myself very strongly about this issue. We in the diaspora here have lived all these years based on the fact that we are the children and grandchildren now. And of course, if you look at the third or fourth or fifth generation that are abound right now, we are the descendants of those people who were massacred and were thrown out of Western Armenia. And even today, this man comes up and says that we have to find out what's happened. Let them find me a Jew, any Jew in the world, who will say that the Holocaust has to be re-examined. I mean, I work with Jewish people. I work with Jews. I work with Orthodox Jews and conservative Jews, Reform Jews, all kinds of Jews, Israelis, non-Israelis. And no one in the world has the decency, common decency, to even come up with that. We know what happened in World War II. Despite if you like them, don't like them, based on whatever political, baseless events or none. I am an Armenian. I know what happened to my people. The Greeks know what happened to the Greek people. The Assyrians know what happened to the Assyrian people, what they call it Saipho. You don't find one Assyrian, one Greek who says that the Assyrian genocide has to be re-examined, or the Greek genocide has to be re-examined by the Turkish government. And the Turks, of course, constitutionally speaking, they will never, ever admit to it. Never. They will never say that Turkey committed a genocide against the Armenian. Case in point in Sudan in 2014, when Erdogan, in the height of the Sudanese genocide in Darfur, when it was happening, Erdogan said this, he said, and you can examine on Google, he said, a Muslim cannot commit genocide. How beautiful. A Muslim cannot commit genocide. But of course, when they take in Azerbaijan an event that was admitted by the former president of Azerbaijan, who said that the event that happened in Khojaly, that was a genocide by Armenians. When they killed thousands of Armenians, destroyed them, put them in a ghetto for 9 months, that's not. Of course, this is the unfortunate and ludicrous.
Yeah, there's
ludicrous. Yeah.
This is very important background. So how is it that this has translated to some kind of a beef that Pashinyan has with the Armenian Church.
Right, I was going to come to that. I apologize. So what happened is this, that the church was the final strong point that was remaining against him.
Yeah.
I was right about to say that. So the church is the final pillar that didn't bend in front of him. The church did not get destroyed. And he forgot one thing, that the church is not only in Armenia, whereas he has the police power, the internal security, the foreign powers that are supporting him from the West, from Turkey, from Azerbaijan, from Britain, from Israel too, and from all these nations that are supporting him. And basically, the church is all over the world. It's the most important and the most foundational, aspect of us being an Armenian. Ask a Greek if you like, for example, a Greek person does not say, this is for the sake of education for everyone. If you ask a Greek if he's a Greek, he doesn't ask if he's a Greek or not. He says, are you Orthodox? That's how a Greek asks another Greek, are you Orthodox? And he knows he's a Greek. If he says no, then he ceases to be a Greek in his eyes. And I've seen this in my life here in the United States for all the 38 years that I've lived here. So as an Armenian, I belong to the Armenian Apostolic Church. Of course, I'm not trying to belittle my brothers and sisters who probably might belong to the Armenian Catholic Church or Armenian Evangelical churches. They are my brethren. However, this is our church and this is our foundation. Let's suppose if it ceases to exist, and Pashinyan is trying to do that, taking his orders from Pashazadeh in Baku, he's taking orders, direct orders.
Absolutely.
Therefore, if he succeeds by what he's doing right now, and I do not call them renegade bishops, I call them rebellious bishops. They are rebellious. They are not renegades.
I think Mikhail Serpazan had a good term for it. Tiradovs.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they are traitors, basically. Basically, the Armenian word for traitors of authority. Armenian Church is not an organization of democracy. The Armenian Church is not an organization that this or that person has a right to come up and say something. Armenian Church is a theocracy. And if they do not like it, let them go and find themselves another place to be worshiping God. This is not the place. The Catholic Church is the same. The Orthodox Church is the same. The Armenian Apostolic Church is a theocracy, although it has democratic rules that it goes by. It cannot be deemed otherwise. No one in the world can come up and say, oh, I do not like the Catholicos. We have to change them. Okay, so lots of people do not like Pope Leo. Lots of people did not like Pope Francis, but they did not have the right to come up and say, I want to change the Pope. Who are you to say that? Who gave you the right, authority, canonical, ecclesiastical, on whatever reason that you can come up with, even if it's that you belong to a prime ministership of a republic, which can be barely seen on the world map, to come up and change the Catholicos of almost 8 million Armenians or more.
Yeah.
I say more because I don't know the exact number of Armenians. No one knows. I count them probably between 8 and 9 million, not more. Okay, but the majority of these people probably accept, even if they are atheists or non-religious. Some of them are non-traditionalist. Some of them go to church maybe once a year. Some of them never go, but they acknowledge Catholicos Garegin II to be the Catholicos of all Armenians, the man who is the pillar who brought us throughout 1700 years and even before, from the time of the Roman Empire all the way to this time. Therefore, who is he? An unelected rascal, I would say, who probably doesn't even know the 2 pages of church history, who haven't even read the Bible in his life, who has all type of manipulations that he came up with in order to cheat and treat people like trash. And we know, I can give you dozens of examples of that. And now he comes and wants to change our Holy Father. I'm not saying that the Holy Father doesn't have faults. We all do. I do first. I'm the first man. I'm a sinner. But no one has the right to come up with sort of, bogus excuses to come and say, I want to change the Catholicos. Man enough, go and change the Pope if you can. The Prime Minister of Italy, Meloni, cannot change the Pope. Who are you to change the Catholicos?
There's Serop. given everything that you are saying, do you think Pashinyan's motivations are personal vendetta or are they geopolitical? Because you
They're
did mention that he gets his signals from abroad.
right.
So which one is
I
more
will
of a
give you,
factor for us?
thank you. I will give you the concrete answer to this question. What's happening in the church today is not between Pashinyan and the Catholicos. This is between Pashazade and our Holy Father. Pashazade is the root problem. Pashazade in Baku, who is the Sheikh of Islam of Azerbaijan, has ordered that Catholicos, Garegin II, should be removed. Why? If you look at his statements in May of 2025, he accused the Armenian Apostolic Church. Are they hearing me? Those renegade or not those rebellious bishops? He accused the Armenian Apostolic Church of terrorism, that we are terrorists. In his view, I and whoever is wearing this cassock is a terrorist. If that's the case, well, I consider every Azerbaijani, clergyman as a terrorist himself, because they have terrorized my nation for more than the 100 years they have been in existence, even before 1918. Anyone who knows Turkish history, and I'm saying anyone, because 31 nations who were subjugated to Ottoman rule since 1300, they know exactly what a Turk is. I'm not trying to belittle any Turk. I'm just trying to let them look at their history. Let them not even read me. I'm an Armenian. Fine. They will say you're biased. Let them go and read the statement that was said this last week by Taner Akçam, who said that the Turkish history is basically based on conquering, taking over, forcefully changing, converting. One small question to any Turkish person who's listening to me. Please count the amount of mosques inside Turkey that were churches. Count them. How many do you find? Therefore, let them not accuse us of anything. Let them look at the religious terrorism they have inflicted upon our nations, 31 nations that were under the rule of the Ottomans. Armenia today, and to sum it up, Armenia today, if you look at the map, is surrounded by 4 nations: Georgia, Azerbaijan, Iran, Turkey. But if you look at it from linguistic and geopolitical way, it is surrounded by all Azerbaijani speakers. In Azerbaijan, they're Azerbaijani speakers. In northern Iran, they're all Azerbaijani speakers. In eastern Turkey, they are constantly and increasingly Azerbaijani speakers. And in the northern part of Armenia, inside Georgia, they're Azerbaijani speakers. Well, guess where do they want to take next in order to establish their so-called Azerbaijani empire, mini empire?
I
And
understand.
this is what Armenians are failing to see. Instead of seeing the sin of a man here or a sin of a man over there, let them first of all look at this. Let them first of all see what's going on when they want to divide Armenia by cutting it from Iran, in other words, our breathing tube, and then cutting it from Georgia and making Armenia an even worse case of Artsakh, surrounded by Azeri-speaking, Turkish-speaking nation. Because Azerbaijan, as a nation, is an extension of Turkey, not a separate nation, a nation bent on destroying the Armenian existence on our native land.
I want to ask you about the renaming of the church.
Yes.
As you know, Pashinyan is trying to rename the country into real Armenia. He's trying to rename the Third Republic to the Fourth Republic. He has this urge. He has said that he wants to rename the Armenian Church from the Armenian Apostolic Church to the Apostolic Church of Armenia. Tell us a little bit about the difference in this.
He can rename something. For example, if he can take a package that he wants to repackage it in his name, any package, he can put a label on it and rename it something else, and thus create his church, which will be basically away from our canons, our laws, our patristic rules that were put on by the church for centuries behind. As I said, Pashinyan didn't even read 2 pages of church history. He's not even familiar with the biblical, ecclesiastical, patristic canons and rules that were put by the churchmen, by the clergy throughout the centuries. And he wants to establish something, of course, with the auspices and the blessing of the Western government, because they want to basically see Armenia, and they do not care if Armenia exists or not, just see Armenia fight or turn against their enemy, Russia. Of course, they haven't learned what happened to Ukraine the Ukrainians which have paid for them. And of course, in Ukraine, they have the same situation. Ukrainian Orthodox Church was split. The one that was under the Moscow Patriarchate was divided, and another portion of it was put under the auspices of or recognition of the Patriarchate of Constantinople. The same happened in Moldova, and the same thing will happen in Armenia. They tried to attempt the same thing in Georgia, but they failed. The Georgian Orthodox Church was cognizant enough not to do that, and they are trying to succeed in Armenia when they are supposed to be anathemized for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I do not know what's the delay in Echmiadzin, but I'm sure that the response will come, and forcefully will come, from His Holiness Garegin II, Catholicos of all Armenians. He will forcefully respond to this type of illegitimate movements that are trying to destroy our Orthodox faith, our Armenian Apostolic faith. Because if he is trying to declare not the fourth, probably he can declare the seventh or eighth republic if he wants to. If he remains, he can go to jail and declare the 14th republic if he wants to. But what I'm trying to be more worried about is the welfare of our people, the oneness of our people. He's trying to divide us always. Look at it this way. This man has nothing else except to lie, separate, divide, and conquer.
The division that you mentioned really concerns me. If this suddenly becomes the Apostolic Church of Armenia, where am I left in this story in the diaspora?
There will be no Apostolic Church in Armenia at all. There will be only the Armenian Apostolic Holy Church, consecrated by our books, consecrated by our Holy Fathers, not by someone who takes his orders from Baku and comes up with a bogus church among the legitimate original church. Look at it this way. There are certain Catholic people now that do not accept the legitimacy of the Pope, and they have a small, radical, renegade, heretical churches around.
Mm-hmm.
This will be most likely a heretical movement, and it is. This will be a schismatic movement. It will be denied and anathemized by the church. And even if they take not 10, let them take 50 bishops with them, the Armenian Apostolic Church will remain strong, and it will not budge. I can say this to you. We will not budge. We will not bend. We will not stop our fight against this type of evil that is trying to destroy our Holy Church.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm afraid that if this sect or this schismatic situation lasts, the next step will be to close down all of the dioceses around the world, because there's no place for them outside of Armenia.
Let me tell you.
So that's a division between the diaspora and the republic itself.
Well, let me tell you this. I mean, even today, before coming on this air, there were 3, 4 priests in Armenia that they have declared all of a sudden their allegiance to the, rebellious movement. Okay. And you have to know that there is rumors going around that every one of them is being paid 5 million dram, which is about $13,000. Well, we know the situation in Armenia. Some priests are hungry and they don't have the means. And some of them, of course, probably don't have any kind of dignity, human dignity, or priestly, dignity to keep up their priesthood alive. And they sell their cross for money. They become Judas, and they become traitor. Fine. I mean, let them do so. If that's what they believe, let them do so. But the dioceses inside or outside Armenia will not be closed. And if you look at the bylaws of the National Ecclesiastical Assembly, Askain Yegeretsagan Jorov, and the any diocesan tema or diocese, you will see that the Catholicos has the final say in any diocesan primate or priest or their actions, because he is the final or the upper priest. He is the supreme patriarch and Catholicos of all Armenians, that when we get ordained, even during ordination, we give our solemn oath too also. In other words, that we will follow his rules and his directives as Armenian priests. If you change all of a sudden, that means you have gone back on your oath.
Mm-hmm.
Because in that case, tomorrow, let's say, if a Muslim comes and rules over Echmiadzin, even, let's say, a sheikh comes and takes over, do I have to follow his rules? I follow the legitimacy of the church, not anyone who is standing somewhere. The legitimacy of the church by the apostolic succession has come from the time of Saint Gregory the Illuminator, going down throughout the centuries, ending up before him with Catholicoi, Georg VI, Vasken I, Garegin I, and now Garegin II, and none other. There is a legitimacy that follows each other. Well, now they're saying that he's not legitimate. Excuse me, in 1999, since 1999, up
After
until
26 years.
Where have you been? Why
Yes,
were you
yes.
silent? Now he is not legitimate because somebody paid you or because you had a deviant or hidden agenda? In that case, you should be thrown out of the church. You don't belong in the Armenian Apostolic Church.
Then, talking about some of the rebellious bishops, I do want to go a little bit more into details. They have made, I believe, at least 3 separate public statements. And the first statement I remember very vividly, it was complaining that there was this bishop who they believed was immoral, and they blamed the Vehapar for failing to defrog him or, discipline him. But more and more, the statements became more direct. And now, the last one is basically they are saying that it was, first of all, it was co-signed by Pashinyan, but it straight out said that the Catholicos would be sent to rest. As forgive me for saying those words. And we can. I don't want to even go into the fake videos or fake evidence that that hasn't been proven against the original bishop who they claimed or who they pretend to be the immoral one. But another curious fact is that this list of bishops seems to have a hierarchy. The statements are always topped by Archbishop Hovnan Derderian, who is the primate of the Western Diocese of the Armenian Church of North America. And since he's not in Armenia, someone always signs in his stead, but he has never rejected his name appearing on this list. And we have to assume that at one point that he has given his approval, his permission for him for these statements to be signed in his place. So, what is the significance of Archbishop Derderian's involvement in this affair? Why is his name always listed first in these statements?
Well, his name is stated first. I mean, let's start with Archbishop Derderian. His name is stated first because he has the rank, he has the seniority in the bishopry. If you look at the bishops, of course, whoever gets ordained first gets the seniority. So he was ordained in 1980 as a celibate priest, and in 1990 he became a bishop. So he is much more older and more senior than the other bishops. Therefore, they go by seniority. But why is he not denying it or admitting to this phenomenon? Well, I'm sorry, somebody has to ask him, I guess, not me. Okay, I have, of course, answered this multiple times before. But Archbishop Derderian, by not coming up with any kind of public statement defending his position or admitting or denying it, he's basically trying to, I don't know, maybe ask the others to do the hard work, I guess. Maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe because there was a lot of newspapers, not many, not little, many newspapers that came up and said that he is the obvious next candidate, candidate of the current regime. Okay, if that's the case, he will be a renegade or a anti-pope if he's elected, let's say. Let's suppose that Pashinyan, despite whatever the whole world says, he will elect him. Okay, he will be an anti-pope, basically anathemized by the current pope. Okay, let him choose. Let him choose. I mean, it's up to him. He knows, by the way, he is not a young man. He knows the church history very well. He knows that in order to obtain a cathedra, you know what a cathedra is? In ecclesiastical terminology, cathedra is the chair, caha. Because when the Pope speaks in Rome, he speaks ex cathedra. Okay? If he gets the cathedra, let's say, he will be denied the blessing of the Armenian people, or the acceptance of the Armenian people as their Catholicos. And he will be put on the list of those long list of anti-popes, which we had, since Ahtamar in 1100s, and all the way down to the point that we had renegade Catholicoi in Artsakh, in Dashir, in other places. I know church history very well. So, and I can elaborate about that. Coming back to the previous question that was asked about the bishop and the video, so-called video, based on which.
Yeah. By the way, these bishops claim to be very moral, so please address that their morality as well.
I will. Before I forget the question and the context that I would like to answer it in. Let me tell you this: that if the video, so-called video, which I haven't seen, okay, but
me neither.
If I would see it, I will tell you that if it has AI, artificial intelligence, making it or not. Okay, let me tell you it this way. I mean, in this age of AI, when I was a student in university not too long ago, they called it the information superhighway back then. Nowadays, it's the age of AI. And imagine in 10 years from now, AI will develop so much. I tell this to everyone to listening to me. So much that you will not distinguish reality from AI at all. A video that will be made, it's as if it is exactly the same person doing something. And therefore, first, before we start answering this question, let me put it this way. I am a court interpreter. Okay? Tomorrow, if somebody can make a video about a case of a person raping or killing someone and presenting that as an evidence in court, will court be compelled to understand this is AI or not? That's number one. Number two, if Archbishop Arshak Khachadurian, let's suppose he had his face and his features made up so well and then presented to the people as if it's a reality when he denied doing this. On the other hand, I heard that, and I read 2 days ago, that they said if Archbishop Khachadurian will join them, he will not be at all, accused of anything. Even 7 years ago, 7 years ago, by putting a small bag of dope into somebody's bag or into somebody's pocket. Okay, in that case, somebody can accuse me, Father Serop, of being in Ford's Theater in 1865, April 14, and I was the one assassinating President Lincoln, not John Wilkes Booth. They can accuse me of being in Dallas, Texas on November 22nd, 1963, and I was the one shooting President Kennedy and running over when I wasn't even born back then. Of course, AI can do that.
Serop, let me also ask.
On Apollo 11, I was on the moon running.
I have also not seen this video. It appears that this video is only seen by the NSS, who have called it, they verified it, and it's real. But the funny thing is, even in their claims, there's no crime there. Right? There's a question of trying to do character assassination on Father Ashag, and but who died and made the government the judge of morality in the society? Shouldn't this government only come in for a crime? And yet, even in their allegations, there is no crime here.
Can I just say something?
Since you are a court interpreter, you know this.
I'm sorry, but Pashinyan should be the first. In that case, he has how many children? 4 children.
Mm-hmm.
He has not been married neither in as a civil marriage nor he has admitted that he hasn't been married in the church. Mm-hmm. So all of his children are.
Let him come forth and show his baptism.
I understand.
Let him come forth and show his baptism papers.
Lots of people are alleging he is baptized. Okay, but the baptism.
Well, let's see it.
First of all, I even posted my questions on my page many times, months ago. Okay, but the most important thing, if he's a honest and spiritual Christian, where he has been all these years, which churches did he attend prior to this? Which church he used to take Holy Communion regularly with? I told you, any Greek, ask them. If you ask a Greek, what are you? They ask him, are you Orthodox or are you not? If they say not, that means they even consider them non-Greek. Any Greek is identified as Orthodox first. If I ask an Armenian, of course, we're not, unfortunately, in that spiritual height. We're not. Even in Georgia, they have respect to the Georgian clergy far more beyond us, because they have, in the past 30 years, they have developed their spirituality on higher and fast paces. Unfortunately, in Armenia, we haven't. This is a shortcoming on our part. But Pashinyan, if he says that this bishop has done something wrong, based on which, and of course the rebellious ones, they're saying that, oh, Bishop Arshak Khachadurian should be defrocked because what he did, which is not proven yet. I said not proven. I told you from the court cases, if anyone comes up with a video, in fact, yesterday, just yesterday, I was in court, family court, and someone came up with a video, based on an, of course, I'm not going to name them, based on a custody case. And the judge cannot make any kind of admittance or acceptance to a case, even if it's a video, without having it proven that it involved any kind of family violence.
Yeah.
Therefore, I mean, these things in Armenia, people are not familiar. Anything said, they believe it because it's coming from above. But let me say this. Anything that comes from above, from the government, they say it. Some people are ready to believe it. Even if Pashinyan says that Muhammad is God, when he is not, he is the prophet of Islam, they will say, yes, he is. Therefore, this type of stupidity has to disappear from us. Because let me tell you this, if those bishops which are alleging that Archbishop Khachadurian did something like that, okay, let them please be kind enough, especially 2 or 3 of them, to give their children a DNA test. Let me see the DNA test. I'm talking about Archbishop Karamyan. I'm talking about Archbishop Mirzakhanian. I'm talking about archbishops who have had different events that went on in their lives. Let Mirzakhanian, who is being applauded by Pashinyan right now, come up with the family of a priest that he destroyed. And of course, we have many, many other cases.
In Georgia.
Shameful events in our church. I am ashamed of reading things like this as an Armenian priest. And of course, as a married priest myself, I hold very high the values of our church and our nation. We cannot let this go on like this. And of course, maybe, I would say this, maybe Pashinyan's appearance was a blessing in one way, that he became the filter by the filth that he is, that the Armenian church will be filtered by even those priests who take 5 million dirham or $13,000 each one of them, and they are ready to deny the blood of the martyrs who are sleeping now in Yerapulur, all those youngsters, without apologizing to one of them for the life that they have given for our nation, for the life that they have put down for Armenia, for the life that they have put for our future, for our generations to come. And they have the guts and the audacity to speak up. These people have to be ashamed of themselves. Amot Hazar Irans, it's a shame that they're doing this. I would never see a Muslim sheikh who would do something like this inside Islam. I would never see a Jewish rabbi ever who would go against his synagogue because another rabbi have done something wrong. And by the way, I am very well versed what's going on in Orthodox Jewish circles, from New York all the way to California. I know shameful things that go on, rabbis and children. I know. Catholic Church, take the Catholic Church, for example. When the Catholic Church for decades have been fighting this unfortunate event that's called child abuse inside the church, did you see any Catholic priest or bishop who went against the papacy? Who said that the Pope himself, who was somewhat complicit in everything that was going on. I'm talking about other Pope. I don't want to injure the feelings of any Catholic brother or sister, but it happened in the Catholic Church, by which they lost many, many faithful who left the church and went to other places, seeing that in other places they have also events that are shameful. But now the Catholic Church is trying to correct itself, and not Maloney, not the president of France, not the president of the United States, not the prime minister of Canada, or the president of Brazil or Mexico, who are Catholics, okay? Not the United States, of course. I'm talking about Joe Biden back then, who was Catholic, trying to correct the Catholic Church based on its mistakes. Nobody has the right to do that. This is a church event. It's an ecclesiastical event. Who is this street person who came from the street by 50 people, and now he's trying to change the fate of millions of Armenians?
Can you, Father Serop, I do want to go into two items, and we have. This is a very interesting discussion, which is why I feel bad about interrupting you, but
No, please, I'm
there's so
sorry.
many topics we want to discuss. So just on the order of, I guess, the rules of order, some of the 10 bishops, I don't know if all of them, but many of them, I think, are part of the Episcopal Assembly or Council. What
Where?
happens, right? I mean, I'm not sure, but how would their rebellion affect the quorum and the makeup of the national council that controls the church? I mean,
Okay.
I guess I forget the formal name for it.
Okay.
I hope was that clear? The
Yeah,
question?
I understood the question completely. I understood the question. Right now, currently, the Armenian Apostolic Church, or the Holy See of Holy, the Mother See of Holy Echmiadzin, Mayrat Rasul Echmiadzin, has 57 bishops right now. 10 of which have indicated their stance, and of course, we have 47 others who, of course, have publicly, not all of them, but majority of them, about 38 or 39, I counted them, in the latest bishopal or episcopal declaration that they remain steadfastly by the side of Holy Echmiadzin. Okay. If 10 of them have done so, and of course now, just today, I've read 3 or 4 priests, one this past week in Switzerland, Father Geram, who, based on personal, I would say, feelings, basically joined them because he wanted to have a rank or a place in the bishopry, and of course it wasn't given to him. He chose this path of destruction. Okay. So if priests will do that after signing their names that they are loyal to the Armenian Church, by the way, Father Keram, who months ago have indicated that he's totally steadfastly loyal, suddenly changed his, and this is what's more, I would say, surprising and devastating for any Armenian to believe. If a father, a priest, you are a priest, and if you say something, people ought to believe you. Not that you change your view all of a sudden. If you're silent, let's say, haven't said anything for months or previously ever, then people would give you that, okay, you haven't said something. But if you say something previously and then change your word suddenly and become something else, I'm sorry, these people are non-legitimate. Their word is basically, they have zero reputation. Their reputation is zero. Because if you say something that the people believe, and after months you change your views and come up with the opposite view, that means that you're not to be believed even in your divine liturgy when you give liturgy. How would I believe that you're giving forgiveness for my sin or releasing me from my sin? And how would I believe that you're giving me the true blessing of a father when in fact you are a wolf inside, trying to take opportunity in order to promote your own or sustain your own interests, not the interest
Yes.
of the mother church? What is a clergy for after all? Aren't we supposed to give our lives for the message of Christ? Aren't we supposed to be the carriers of the cross and move on with it despite persecution, despite isolation? I mean, take my case. I've been isolated for all these years, but I never given my call. I've never gone to become a coach of football. I haven't become a layman, which have paid me much more. I haven't become a banker because people said, Father, you're not a good businessman. Well, I'm glad I'm not a good businessman. I did not choose to become a businessman. I chose to become a priest, and I chose to become a carrier of the cross. If they don't like it, then they're in the wrong church, and they are not Orthodox. Orthodoxy means you have to be loyal to the end. If you're not
Yeah.
loyal, take off your clothes. That's all I have to say. And if they cannot have the to have the humanity to have that, what can I say? They're in the wrong, place.
Yeah. According to recent polls, the church is the number one institution that people trust. Even after all these persecutions, 70 to 80% of Armenians support the Armenian Apostolic Church. But it is clear, I think, to the naked eye that the resources of the church are insufficient to address all of the ills of Armenian society today. So I want to actually address some of the reasons for that, because throughout history, churches have a tendency to accumulate property. We can look at the Catholic Church, which is known to be one of the largest landowners in the world. The Armenian Apostolic Church, unfortunately, has been suffering greatly during some of the imperial overlords that they've had, including, namely the Ottoman Empire, and also during the Soviet times, the church in Armenia was essentially gutted. All property was confiscated by the respective empires, and that took over the land. Now, after independence, only some of the property was returned to the church. For instance, it is mentioned that entire cities, I believe Archbishop Mikhail mentioned this, that villages such as Mugni, even the city of Varashapat, used to belong to the Mother Sea, including wide swaths of land in Armenia. The government of Georgia, for instance, pays yearly reparations for the injustices that the Georgian Orthodox Church has suffered during the communist times. Meanwhile, the Armenian government, most recently, I think a few weeks ago, further curtailed the ability of the Armenian Apostolic Church to acquire new property. They passed a law, it seems, in spite of, as part of this fight against Echmiadzin. Can you tell us what is the potential impact of the church not having access to its property in terms of being able to carry the word of Christ to the Armenian people?
Well, as I mentioned previously, this is not in between the current government, which is just basically a representation of the regime in Baku. Baku is what's dictating this, and it's pulling the strings from the behind the curtain. And therefore, they want the Armenian Church, of course, to be belittled, to, of course, shade out and then disappear, because they would like to turn Armenia eventually, first of all, into a more apathetic nation, and then eventually to induce Islam into us and turn our people more and more into a religion that pays them, that pays people. And of course, we know the unfortunate event that in Armenia we have a swath of society that will take money and do anything you want. Unfortunately, this is very unfortunate. They're basically under the spell or influence under this future beautiful life that came up from either Europe or from the Turkish nations. But thank the Lord that we have had the education given enough in the past 30 years that our people who were part of the Soviet Union for more than 74 years have come somehow to the light of Christ and rediscovered its values. As far as the lands that are being confiscated, taken back, this current government is basically doing everything to discredit the church and to destroy the church, but they won't succeed at the end. The Armenian people will come to their senses, I believe, and they will understand that, after all, this is a government that has lied in every single aspect that they have promised. They have lied about every promise they've given. They have even cut the funds for the people who are sick and old, and not even raising them with 20,000 dirhams. I don't know, $50. Is that how much it is? 50, 20,000.
Yeah,
$50 is not good enough for all the people who don't have money to buy their bread, to purchase their medication, to purchase clothing, proper clothing, or to heat up their house. And he yet tries to promote his Barkevavjar, his money,
bonuses, yeah.
his giving of funds or money to his government agents in order to prompt them more to go on TV, to be on the television, media, radio, on every single aspect of the government, and try to influence the people that you will be living a better life like this. So therefore, our people have to, first of all, decide who they are. Are they, first of all, the loyal people that we were always, or are we going to change? I mean, if the government will take the lands from the church, they have closed down the TV show Agat. They are taking now rules that they will basically take away lands of the church. Let somebody then answer the question, was this between the Catholicos and Pashinyan? Or is this Pashinyan versus the Armenian Apostolic Church? If Pashinyan is doing everything to discredit and destroy the Armenian Apostolic Church, how can somebody say anymore with the allegation that this is just to remove the so-called evil and the so-called immoral Catholicos? If that's the case, let him look around and see the 10 that are surrounding him. Some of them have done acts which are more shameful than to be even, recorded. Some of them are mafia bosses. They have the offshores, the multimillionaires dollars and property all over the place. If Pashinyan wants to take property away, let him first of all try to take the property of someone who is sitting in Yerevan, who probably owns the most important assets over there, and he does diamond business outside as a bishop. And then he has the guts to turn around and divide the church based on his political needs. I mean, the person who is an Armenian apostolic, of course, I'm talking with the English language podcast that we're doing right now to address the Armenian people in the diaspora. Lots of people in the diaspora don't know what's going on. They just hear things, but they are not familiar with things that are going on.
It's true.
Therefore, I mean, podcasts like this are supposed to be given more and more, and people have to be educated more and more, especially here in the Western Diocese or in California proper or outside of California, so that people will understand what's going on. What's going on? They don't know anything. They don't read the Armenian media. Unfortunately, some of the Armenians who live in the United States, they don't read Armenian. Therefore, they just follow what's being said from outside. Well, fortunately and luckily, we have you and Aspit and people like you who read English and can convey this to the people to understand more and more. Therefore, our people here have to be eliminated. But why the people are not talking? Because unfortunately, the leadership that we have are those ringleaders who behooves them to have this situation because they have something to gain out of it.
Father Serop, we are recording this show on January 9 today, only 3 days after Armenian Christmas or Theophany. The other major holiday that Armenians celebrate is, of course, Easter. And this year that is on April 5, I believe, Sunday, April 5, and Orthodox Easter is on April 12. Tell us just a couple of minutes on what is the significance of these two holidays. What's Armenian Christmas supposed to mean to Armenians, and what is Easter for us?
Well, as probably you've heard before, Armenians have celebrated Christmas always on the original date, which was January 6th. The entire Christian church used to celebrate it on January 6th, up until the time that in the 16th century, they found out that the Julian calendar has irregularity, by which they were adding days to it because they didn't calculate. The Julian calendar does not calculate the date exactly by calculating it only as 24 hours and a quarter. So therefore, throughout the years in 1582, when they found out that they were have accumulated more than 13 days, Pope Gregory have discounted them and have put on the new calendar, which is called the Gregorian calendar. Now, that's why there is a difference in between the Easter of our Easter and the Orthodox Easter. Orthodox churches, which still do the Julian calendar, and we Armenians have it in Jerusalem as well. In Jerusalem, the Armenians celebrate it with the Julian calendar because we are in the realm of the Jerusalem status quo.
And I think that's January 19, correct?
That January 19 is our Christmas over there, yes.
Yeah.
Because it's 15 days. By the way, I have to mention that every 200 years, they add a day. In other words, in 2100, the year 2100, the Orthodox will not celebrate on January 7. They will celebrate on January 8. So, just as an information. But why do we have the Armenian Christmas on the same day? Because, of course, during the time of Pope Gregory VII, I think it was, that they realized it's better to have Saturnalia followers to basically come to the faith of Christ. And starting from Jerusalem, because people had to transport between Jordan, River Jordan to Jerusalem, which took days for them. Therefore, they had to switch days a little bit and make it December 25. Well, of course, December 25 in the Julian calendar is still January 7th. So therefore, December 25, their Christmas, is celebrated on January 7th. But depends on which calendar you follow, Julian or Gregorian. Now, as far as our Easter, Catholicos Georg V in 1923 switched the Armenian Church from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, because we were, of course, at that point, part of the Soviet Union. And the whole world, by the way, had a trend of following the new calendar, the Gregorian calendar. All the nations, I mean, even Turkey, after the Ottoman Empire, which was following Julian calendar, in 1920, Turkey itself followed the Gregorian calendar. Greece also, and all the nations, eventually, all the nations have entered the Gregorian calendar, which became the modern calendar followed by the United Nations. But as far as our Christmas, it never changed. It will always remain January 6th. Of course, we celebrate the birth of Christ. Unfortunately, one more thing as a note nowadays, that Christmas has become too commercialized in the West here, in the United States. It is a holiday of basically the chocolate and the tree and commercialization of all Christmas holiday. And of course, if you follow all the Christian holidays on a calendar, they have all been commercialized, unfortunately.
I'd like to hear specifically about Theophany.
Theophany.
What is the significance of January 6th Theophany?
Well, the Astvatsa Haitnutun in
Exactly.
Armenian, you know, the appearance of the Lord, or theophany is the word made of two words, theos and epiphania, which means God's appearance. God, our Lord, appeared among us in the person of Jesus Christ, who is the eternal Son of God, one of the persons of the Holy Trinity, who begat and got body, who became human and lived among us in the person of Jesus Christ, and brought us to be reconciled with the Father by shedding his blood on the cross. So his birth is not the birth of a regular human. He is the birth of God incarnate among us. And therefore, he is also called Emmanuel, which means God with us, Astvat Mermech. Therefore, theophany or epiphany, as they say in the West, is the same, and which means that we have seen, we have touched, and we have known the Lord in his body. Because this has also some significance to it, even in the early Christian history, in the first century, when there were movements that they didn't believe that Christ was appearing among us in reality. There were people who called themselves the people who just believed in Christ as being a phenomenon, not a real person. And that's why the Gospel of John, and especially the first letter of John, which is in the New Testament, testified to that. And especially this was the early movement of the Gnostic movement against the church. And of course, there's so much history that our people should learn. And my only pain is that our bishops sometimes do not allow, known, knowledgeable priests to teach the people. Our tragedy right now is the people don't know much, haven't followed much, because they haven't been taught. They haven't been given all these important details as to, first of all, understand what a Christian is.
So on Theophany, are we celebrating the baptism or the appearance or the birth of the divine side of Christ rather than the birth of a baby?
We celebrate the birth and baptism of our Lord Jesus Christ on the same day. Because, as I said, the church from early on, from time immemorial, in other words, from the time of the apostles, celebrated on January 6th. And they used to do the birth and baptism of the Lord at the same day. Epiphany was, of course, on January 6th, and birth. But because the church have switched the date and brought it a little bit early in order to obtain those who were worshiping Saturn the god Saturn of the Roman Empire. And this is before the fall of Rome in 476. They wanted to bring those people to the light of Christ. So they put the birth of the Lord in the same day in order to bring people to the Lord. And it was behooving the people in Jerusalem, because from the birth of Christ, which in Bethlehem, commemorated in Bethlehem, going to the river Jordan to commemorate where he was baptized was going to take days for them walking. Therefore, they had to switch that, practically speaking, while the Armenians kept the same day, where we celebrate the birth and the baptism of the Lord when we do blessing of water in our churches, commemorating that beautiful and blessed event.
Thank you for that. I think that's very interesting. One final question before we close.
Sure.
When we started this Zoom call, I called you Hayr Serop, and you said you are Der Serop.
Yes.
Tell our audience, what is the difference between the clergy and how we address them? For example, is it Hayr Serop, or is it Der Serop, or what is it?
Thank you.
Or Der Hayr?
Thank you. Thank you. In fact, every clergyman has his rank and his stance in the church. We have to understand there are two types of clergy in the Armenian Church: married and celibate. Married clergy, which are usually, or deacons, or let's say either deacons or priests. A priest is called Der Hayr, father, and he is called Der Serop. Of course, it's not appropriate to give his name all the time, say Der Serop, Der Serop. It's appropriate to address him as Der Hayr, father. Whereas the other side, where we have celibate priesthood, those who put the veil on, the verar, they are called Hayr. And Apera, a Vartabit, and Zairakum Vartabit are called Hayr, father. Let's say his name is Father Marcos. Then we call him as Hayr Marcos, not Der Marcos, because he's not married. If a bishop is there, then we call him Serpazan. And we don't give his name. For example, we don't call Mikhail Serpazan all the time, but unless we are going to distinguish which Serpazan we're talking about, we call him Serpazan Hayr. And a Vartabit we call Hayr Surp, Holy Father, because their life is supposed to be life of holiness, of course, and that's a prompt that they have to remember, obviously, all the time. And we are called Der Hayr in order to remind us that we are a father and a protector of our flock, Der Hayr. And the Catholicos, he's called Vehapar, because this is the name that was given to the kings. Vehapar is a name, a title was given to the kings. And the reason that a Vehapar is given consecration, and I know that no priest probably spoke about this before, a consecration is given to the Vehapar, whereas in the other churches it doesn't exist. In the Greek, in the Catholic, in the Orthodox churches, it doesn't exist. We are the only church, perhaps, that have a consecration of a Catholicos, because it is a event that remained since the Cilician kingdom, whereas our last kings have basically extinguished the kingdom of Cilicia, and Vehapar was consecrated, and he is the one who has the right to sign in red ink and to give his seal, and he is called Vehapar, which is a title given to a king. And therefore Vehapar is a king in a church, and not an earthly king, but his kingdom is the church, whereas his crown is the crown of thorns, and his staff is the cross, and his life is the life of following Christ. Therefore, it's important for us to remember that our King of Kings is in heaven, and our earthly Vehapar is our Father, who sustains us and gives us the unity of our people, with which we will defend against every enemy, foreign or domestic.
In Armenian, we have Serpazan,
Yes.
which we address bishops and archbishops. Of course, we also have Episkopos and Archiepiskopos. Is it more proper to just say Serpazan to bishops and archbishops?
That's correct. In fact, we say Serpazan to both bishops and archbishop, because in the church there are three ranks. Three primary ranks only: a deacon, an elder, which is a priest, and a bishop. That's it. These are the total ranks. But the others are basically technicalities or added on throughout the centuries. The biblical or the scriptural event by which we know the ranks of the church, which are set by the apostles themselves, are three: deacon, priest, bishop. And a bishop from an archbishop has no difference, because it's only a title. An archbishop is a title, not a, let's say, supremacy in any sort or any way. You can even have a bishop who might be more senior than an archbishop when he was ordained before him, let's say. So, of course, archbishopry, of course, gives him a more seniority based on the title. However, even patriarchs, we have two patriarchs, by which we call them Serpazan Badriarch. Serpazan, not Vehapar. A Vehapar is only given title to the Catholic, one in Echmiadzin, one in Antelias.
So if we were actually to meet the patriarch of Constantinople or Jerusalem, we would call them Serpazan Hayr?
Serpazan Badriarch or Serpazan Hayr, that will be appropriate. Ayo. It will be appropriate because, of course, most important is to call them by the appropriate titles all the time. And of course, we know that they are leaders of their, area or them, and they come from very, very early times. I mean, the Patriarchate of Jerusalem from 639 and the Patriarchate of Constantinople from 1461.
Very interesting discussion, Delhayr. We would be honored to have you back sometime in the future, but let's leave it here for today. And I appreciate your time with us today.
My pleasure. May the Lord bless you on this holy week that we are living post-Christmas, because we live 80 days after Christmas. And I wish to thank you, Aspet and Hovik, and may the Lord's blessing be with you, your families, and hopefully we will meet again in podcasts like this down the road.
Thank you there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hovik, that was kind of an interesting show today. Very different from
Not
a lot
our
of
usual
our other
fare.
shows. Yeah. Okay, well, this episode was recorded on January 9, 2026. We've been talking with Father Serop Azarian, who is a priest in the Armenian Apostolic Church. He has served in the U.S. Army National Guard and earned degrees in divinity and biblical studies. In the past, he has served in the Eastern Prelacy of the Armenian Church between 1999 and 2007, the Western Diocese of the United States between 2007 and 2010, and the Canadian Diocese from 2011 to 2014. He now works as a court interpreter in Clark County, Nevada, while remaining active as a priest educator.
We hope you liked the show. In any case, let us know in the comments. And if you prefer more shows like this, definitely mention that so that we know and we can try to plan our podcast accordingly. So if you feel like we should have more shows covering topics of the Armenian Apostolic Church, including we can even go, we were talking with Father Serop before the show about doing a series of podcasts going into various episodes of the Armenian Church, covering history, covering different important events of the church. If you think that's useful to you, let us know in the comments, and make sure that you like, comment, and share this episode to help us reach more people.
All right. I'm Aspet Bedrosian in Los Angeles.
And I'm Hovik Manucharyan in Occupied Yerevan. I think I should change my sign-off statement to be Occupied Yerevan from now on.
We'll talk to you soon, folks.
Have a great day.